Psst, psst, psst.
Hey,
did you hear?
Did you hear about the new podcast?
Hoy,
What's it called? It's literally called
Psst.
What?
There's a new podcast out right now. It's from Fil-CHA.
Pilipinx AO sharing stories together, as in the Psst podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Pilipinx AO Sharing Stories Together podcast. Today is October 27th, 2021. This is episode Immigration and Resources for Mixed Status Undocumented Filipinx during COVID-19. Disclaimer, information is up to date as of today's recording, live stream on October 27th, but due to the circumstances surrounding COVID-19, information may have changed by the time you view this episode. So this is brought to you by Fil-CHA. The goal of the Filipinx AO Community Health Association, Fil-CHA, is formerly known as the Filipinx AO COVID-19 Resource and Response Team, Fil-COVID. And we are here to address the health disparities within the Filipinx AO community and provide policy recommendations and resources surrounding the needs of our people, the community. We also aspire to serve as a network for the Filipinx AO community through collaboration between scholars, community organizers, leaders, researchers, social workers, public health advocates, professionals, clinicians, media, and everyone in between. As for introductions, my name is Eddy Gana Jr. My gender pronouns are they, them. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I am a clinical program manager of SIPA, or Search to Involve Filipino Americans, based in historic Filipino town, Los Angeles. My expertise is on child and adolescent mental health. And so I provide counseling services to Filipino families all across LA County. And in addition to my work at SIPA, I am also a community organizer, co-director of Sunday Jump, the longest running Filipino-founded open mic series in Filipino town at PWC, Filipino Worker Center, which I am sure we're going to hear a lot more about today. And so just very excited to share space with each and every one of our guests here. And of course, my co-host for today. And so I'm joined by Aqui.
Hi everyone. I'm Aqui Versoza, and I'm going to be your co-host for today's episode of podcast. And I'm a founder and I'm the current executive director of Filipino Worker Center. Our Larry Itliong Center is located in historic Filipino town. And we are an organization of some amazing members. The heart and soul of our organization are members, most of who are caregivers or domestic workers who care for our elders in their homes or in small facilities like boarding care facilities. And man, we did feel this pandemic. And we also are a vehicle of just empowering and building power for the Filipino community, but especially low-wage immigrant workers, and especially also lifting up undocumented workers as well. I'm also a fellow at Rutgers University and part of the Build the Base program. And I am the president of the board of the National Domestic Workers Alliance and on the steering committee for LA Worker Center Network as well. So I'm really happy to be here with everyone. And I want to introduce one of our guest speakers for today. First, I'd like to introduce Madison Villanueva. And Madison is an undocumented Pinay warrior who was born in Cavite, Philippines, and immigrated here to California. Much of her work revolves around building power among the undocumented community to fight for collective liberation and healing. Her chosen family is Uplift, for which she is a core leader working to nurture the leadership and uplift the narratives of undocumented Asian Pacific Islanders. And I knew her way back in 2014 when she volunteered and worked with Filipino Worker Center. And so it's just so amazing to see what she's doing in the community today. I'm going to pass it to Eddy to, oh yes, please add about yourself.
Oh, sorry, can't hear you. Madison?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're good.
Great, sorry about that. Yeah, thank you, Aki, for the introduction. I did want to share a little bit more about the organization and also my chosen family called Uplift. We're an undocumented Asian Pacific Islander organization based in Los Angeles, and we are committed to uplifting undocumented API narratives, engaging with the community, supporting our members, and yes, there was another pillar that I am missing there, but those are what we do as Uplift.
Awesome. Thank you, Madison. And so we're also joined by Madeleine Villanueva. And so Madeleine was born in the Philippines and immigrated to the US with her family at the age of 9. She has worked to advocate for and with undocumented Asian Pacific Islanders as a member of Uplift, an undocumented API-led organization based in LA. So she currently works as a higher education specialist with Immigrants Rising, ensuring that educators in colleges and universities across the state are equipped to support undocumented students. So Madeleine, yes.
Yeah, thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here with you all. Just adding a little bit more about Uplift. We do also do a lot of like leadership development. I'm undocumented myself, currently with DACA. And so Madison took my words for it, but I do also believe Uplift is a chosen family, and I wouldn't be the person I am today without the leadership development that I got from this space.
Great. And before we get into the discussion, I would just like to take a minute for acknowledgements. So first, a big thank you to the Association of Asian Pacific Community Health Organizations, or AAPCHO, for making this podcast possible. Also, this podcast was partially funded with generous support from the Walmart Foundation. Our podcast is also produced in partnership with We Can Do This and the Department of Health and Human Services.
And so this here is our 13th episode, Immigration and Resources for Mixed Status Undocumented Filipinx during COVID-19, as part of our series. And so this is following our 12th episode, which was about Road to Recovery in All Forms during COVID-19. And so now today we will focus on how immigrants and undocumented Filipinx community members experiences during COVID-19 and what resources are available for our members of our community.
Great. So we want to get right into the discussion. And this is for both of you, Madison and Madeleine. Based on your background and expertise, what have you noticed about the experience of immigrants and mixed status folks? What has been their experience going through this pandemic?
If I can go first, I think it's definitely been a trying time. I know that a lot of undocumented Filipinos in general have been impacted by COVID because of folks who are in the healthcare industry and all of that, but at the same time and also in the service industry. But at the same time, for undocumented Filipinos, a lot of times, like, we either don't have access to healthcare or don't know that we have access to healthcare, and there a lot of challenges and myths and misinformation and misunderstanding comes from that. So during COVID, people don't know that they might have that they could get access to healthcare if they contracted COVID. For a long time, there was misinformation or just lack of knowledge that when it comes to getting COVID tests. I'm not sure if the same thing happened with the COVID vaccine, but I feel like there's just in general like lack of information when it comes to finding the right resources among the undocumented community, especially among undocumented Filipinos. And at the same time too, because for a lot of folks who are working in the service industry, they might have lost their jobs. And for folks that have citizenship or just social security number, they can get unemployment benefits. But for undocumented folks, who don't have a social security number, they don't qualify for that. And so a lot of times, like, undocumented folks had to figure out their own way because they couldn't, for people who don't have a social security number, they couldn't get the stimulus. They couldn't get unemployment income if they have their own business or were self-employed. Then they couldn't apply for the PPP loan that was being given out by the federal government. And for undocumented students, they were left out of the CARES Act, which was given to college students and higher education institutions. And so overall, a lot of undocumented folks were left out of resources that really kept citizens and green card holders afloat during the pandemic. And just the fact that we might already be in like more precarious industries that are more impacted by COVID. It just added to the levels that we were impacted by the pandemic. But at the same time too, that, our community is resilient and creative. And so what came out too was a lot of mutual aid fundraisers and putting together a lot of different resources, and in general, just our communities like coming together to help each other out. So I know I helped put together some resources. My sister's organization, Immigrants Rising, also put together resources. There was a bunch of mutual aid fundraisers, and we just, made sure that everyone got the resources that they needed. It wasn't enough, but at the same time, like, our communities got each other's backs.
Yeah, I think I'll also just add that even prior to the pandemic, there's been a lot of shifts in immigration law, like brought about by like the Trump administration. And yeah, just around that, I think there's also just a lot of general fear for undocumented folks to even seek out resources in the first place, and like changes around like public charge and how that could affect your immigration status, basically asking, or your chance of adjusting your immigration status in the future could have been possibly affected by the previous public charge proposed rule, and the insecurity of things like DACA, which went through like a roller coaster in the past year, in the past 2 years, I think has also kind of discouraged. I feel like it has also made undocumented folks just like discouraged to even seek out these resources in the first place, because it could have like bigger impact and repercussions in their lives outside of like seeking care at the moment. And so I think during the pandemic, alongside those like mutual aid funds that were created by the community, there was also just a lot of like more information sharing, like more dispelling of the different myths that undocumented folks don't have and shouldn't access these resources. So I think in the same way that the community showed up for each other in that way, I think there was also a lot of like empowerment by making sure that folks knew of what they could access and that they should be accessing those things too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the pandemic really made visible a lot of the inequities that actually have been existing in our community. And I did see, like, with our members, the housing situation, the housing crisis. We have caregivers who are, they're living caregivers, but they do have like rooms or bed spaces in very crowded apartments or houses. And when they were possibly being exposed to COVID, they had no place to actually safely quarantine. And so, like, in their crowded housing, they could possibly spread it then to others who are working with, vulnerable populations of seniors. We had one member who lives in a house of with 16 different caregivers all together, and they're sharing like 2 bathrooms, and not having money to like actually go anywhere else to quarantine. And so many of them didn't drive, of course, because they can't get driver's license, or there's a lot of older women immigrants who like don't have cars and rely on public transportation. And all of the tests at the beginning were drive-through tests for COVID, and you couldn't be driven through with like Uber. So we just saw how some of these essential workers who are undocumented workers then like had such difficult times and often were not thought of in terms of like accessing housing resources. Like we had to fight with the city and figure out how to get them access to the city housing resources, figure out, navigate how to access COVID testing and a lot of things. But I wonder if you also on the side of the experience of, it did open up some possibilities, some new possibilities, because so many of the norms were kind of wiped out. I wonder if you saw what your experience was in terms of, advocacy and organizing. So there was mutual aid, but also just advocacy and organizing in the undocumented Filipino community that happened during the pandemic as well.
I think definitely there was a lot of trying to get support. Mutual aid, I think, was where a lot of people rallied just because they understood that the economic impact was so huge. And it's almost like, how can you advocate? How can you like go out and like fight for other people when you're on the verge of losing your housing, when you don't have like food to eat? And so honestly, it was really amazing to even see like how many types of mutual aid fundraisers there were, and then how a lot of folks also help people apply to those things. And I think down the line too, there was obviously advocacy because I forgot to mention this, but in the state of California, the Disaster Relief Fund came out, and that thing was like, it got flooded so quick. So it was also up to a lot of community members to make sure that people were able to get the support that they needed. And so I remember like, I was working at Cal State Northridge's Dream Center at the time, and we helped out like 80 people in like a couple of days just to make sure that they were able to like get the calls that they needed. And I think that at the same time too, like just making sure that people were able to go around I know there were some folks that was helping people out, kind of going on what you were saying, Aki, about a lot of the testing was drive-through. So there was also a lot of like very practical support. I think when it comes to organizing, policy plays a really big role so that we at least all have a safety net. But we also need like the more immediate things that came into light during the pandemic, the like daily basic needs that everyone needs.
Yeah, we definitely need a strong, resilient community that is able to really build strong relationships and support each other. Absolutely. And we did win Medicare for all seniors. And
there you go.
That was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I just want to echo a lot of what Madison said about the initial like advocacy or the initial setting up of mutual aid funds really encouraged or really also showed like the state of California that they also just need to step up and offer funds for undocumented folks specifically who don't have access to the federal stimulus packages. And so I think that really came about because of all the advocacy that folks did, specifically a lot of like community-based organization. I know the city of LA also did a couple of like rent relief programs, and even just I think there was a debit card at one point offered to undocumented folks or offered to all residents of LA regardless of immigration status, that I don't think would have been possible if folks like didn't push and fight for all those things. And I think in my work as well in higher education, we did see a lot and help a lot of educators kind of figure out like creative ways to use fundings that they were available on their campuses, because as Madison mentioned initially, like the undocumented students were shut out of the CARES Act. And so I think a lot of like educators too were advocating in their own way and finding like, okay, we can't use this funds. Like, what else could we pull up in our campus to support these students who are not eligible for anything?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm going to pass it to Eddy.
Oh, yeah. So both of you spoke about misinformation, right? And how that was a challenge, especially with the political climate and feeding off of fear. I have a family member who's DACA, and so also like having conversations with her, and it was a troubling time just trying to find out the right information, right? And then also out of that misinformation, myths are coming about. And so wanted to ask you both, what are the myths of being an undocumented person?
I think definitely a big one that we already touched on is the assumption or the myth that undocumented folks can't use resources, can't use public benefits. And a lot of that is rooted in public charge. And I know we mentioned it. I realize people might not know what it is. So the public charge rule has actually always been in place, but it was really ramped up under the Trump administration and penalized immigrants for using public benefits. And it went through the Supreme Court. It was being debated on for a couple of years and finally overturned during COVID. But even then, there was a lot of misconception on like, well, if I use healthcare, will that affect me down the line? Will I be arrested? Will I be detained? Will I be deported if I am caught using public benefits? And that's not true, especially in the state of California, where a lot of the organizers have fought for California to be a lot more immigrant friendly. Like Aki mentioned, Health for All was expanded to seniors. The Medi-Cal access was expanded to seniors and young adults, regardless of immigration status. And at the same time too, like I used to work in higher education, there was a lot of students who didn't even know that they could get financial aid. That's a huge misconception, right? Especially for younger undocumented folks who go through high school and then just hit a block once they go to college, because resources and information is like difficult to be found. So I think like there's this misconception that if the government gets your information, then what's going to happen? But I also want to flip it around that like if you don't get the resources that you need, then like what's going to happen? Like if you don't ask for the help that you need, that your family needs, it's also going to be really difficult for you. And I think that's something that I find a lot with Filipino families, that we try to do everything ourselves to our own detriment, to our own like health, and it's to the detriment of our health. But there's so many resources out there, including the Filipino Workers Center, that has so much information and is also like dedicated to combating misinformation for immigrant folks.
I think just early on as well, there was a lot of fear with vaccine accessibility. Would your information be kind of taken and used against you as well? If you're an undocumented person, is there going to be immigration enforcement at vaccine sites? Do you have to present an ID, right? That was always an ask for those things. And so I think a lot of those kind of added to like, oh, the vaccine's not for undocumented folks, or it's really hard for like certain undocumented folks to get things like the vaccine or even get healthcare access. And so I think just going back to a lot of the community organization that made sure that this information and that folks were being helped in accessing these things I think there's also the myth that undocumented folks are like helpless. individuals, but I think this pandemic and even prior to that, right, has shown that that's not the case. Like I know a lot of the policies that we have here in California, including the healthcare, Health for All for seniors this year, were made possible because of the advocacy efforts of folks like PwC and all the undocumented Filipino workers that you all represent. And I know like we've been working on that in Uplift as well. And our counterpart in the Bay Area, Aspire, who's another undocumented organization, like I think also showing that there is a lot of power and there's a lot of like work being done and led by undocumented Filipinos, undocumented APIs, undocumented people in general.
Yeah, with some of our undocumented leaders who really, was really dedicated to some of our mutual aid efforts of driving, groceries to other folks who couldn't go outside, and also just to continued working through like the holiday season. They're like, we know people are needing things at this time. We got to get these resources to them. So just super, super dedicated. And at the same time, when our domestic worker health and safety bill also this year got signed by the governor. So lots of Zoom like meetings and testimonies of calling in. And it was really great to see as well. So I think, it just shows how much a part of the fabric undocumented individuals are here in California, and it's great to see more recognition, but we still have to push more because like the CARES Act money, a lot of those resources were not accessible to undocumented immigrants. And now we have this opportunity with the American Rescue Plan funds. They don't have the same kind of restrictions that we have to like push all these government agencies, the county, the city, the state, to make sure that all of the resources that are getting out through the ARP funds are accessible to our community. And I was thinking, Madeleine, when you're talking about like, the myths around the vaccine, like there are certain things that just didn't help with that the Department of Public Health was doing sometimes, which made it really challenging. So it made it that much more important to have like, community groups and other communities supporting individuals through that. I don't know if you went to some of the big pod sites where it looked like a militarized zone because there's like law enforcement that are helping with traffic and stuff, but it's very intimidating. And then you never know. Sometimes they would accept an ID, or sometimes they, different types of ID or different types of letter would like shift all the time. And it just gets so intimidating. So we just need to keep on pushing that, our county, our city has to do better in terms of serving all of our communities.
And that is frustrating for that inconsistency to be there. I actually haven't been able to check out the podcast, the pod sites in person, but I've seen photos of it, and I definitely can see how intimidating it can be. And then on top of that, the misinformation or inconsistency of like whether you need to have a ID or not, right? I think that speaks to the importance of the work that you all are doing, in terms of combating misinformation, organizing the folks, whether it's direct services, whether it is lobbying, but in all the different ways you can overcome these myths, and show that these myths are exactly that. They're myths. They're not true. They're lies. And so, showing that there is power in the people, and what's most important is knowing that there are resources, right? That there are access to that. There is accessibility to that, and that undocumented folks are not helpless, right? Undocumented folks have access to a myriad of resources to help better one's life. And so
especially
in
California. Maybe you can help share with the community now, like, what are resources, groups, organizations that you know of that are resources for undocumented or mixed status individuals and families?
I mean, I'm always going to plug in our organization, Uplift. I know over the pandemic, we did hold a lot of different just spaces to connect with other people and feel like they're still in community, even though we're still even though we were like stuck at home. And I also wanted to highlight the California Immigrant Policy Center, CIPC. I really trust them when it comes to information. They're pretty good at highlighting and giving updates on immigrant policies, especially in California, and how folks can benefit off of them. And there's just so many things, so many policies that they touch upon, including healthcare access, when it comes to taxes, and even like, what else have they done? Like driver's licenses, they have information when it comes to that. And they're very timely. They work on that year round. And so anytime there's something big, they're able to get out resources. And so I subscribe to their listserv, follow them on social media, and make sure that we get make sure that the information gets out to our community.
Yeah, they're major leaders in the Health for All campaign, as well as they're big supporters of the domestic worker occupational health and safety bill also.
Shout out to CIPC, they are amazing.
Yeah, CIPC also has a bunch of languages, or a bunch of resources in a bunch of different languages, including a lot of including Tagalog and other Asian languages. So I always also refer folks to them if they're looking for non-English resources too. And I guess I'll also just plug the organization I work for as well. Immigrants Rising, we are a Bay Area based nonprofit, but we serve, I think, the majority of California around making sure that undocumented folks are equipped and empowered to achieve their educational and career goals. So I personally work with a lot of higher education access, but we also have other resources around mental health access, which is another important and another myth, I think, around for undocumented folks, that you don't have access to mental health care as an undocumented person. But we do we do connect undocumented folks through therapists through our mental health connector, free of charge in California. And I know there's also legal services that we provide as well. And I'll maybe turn it over to Madison to talk about some of the entrepreneurship support that's available to all Californians, regardless, or to undocumented Californians that we provide through Immigrants Rising. And I think I'll just shout out as well, the colleges and universities also have different Dream Resource Centers and undocumented student programs that serve students in that college, but also around the community and their family. Specifically, the California community colleges actually set up legal services for undocumented students and staff, and I believe this is also available at the CSU and the UC. So legal services are also a big need for the undocumented community, right? And so folks part of those institutions, this doesn't cover everybody, also have access to those resources through there.
Yeah, I can share a little bit more about the seed grant through Immigrants Rising. I did forget to mention that I also work at Immigrants Rising, and currently I'm working on the seed grants and our entrepreneurship learning hub called Spark. So this resource is specifically for undocumented folks. If you are an entrepreneur, business owner, even if you're a micro entrepreneur and you're just selling things on Etsy, you're a street vendor, you can apply for the seed grant. We partner with the Filipino Workers Center, so you can also get information from there on how to apply. As long as you have a business in California or you want to start a business in California, you don't even have to have it set up yet. You can apply to help you start off your business. You can qualify for a $5,000 grant or a $10,000 grant.
Yeah, and what's also amazing about the program is that it it has built into it supports that help you to either plan for and launch your business, or to really come together with a plan to take your business to the next level. And so it's both that kind of support as well as bring you into a community of support, and the micro grants, which are of course always helpful. So we're really excited to partner with that program. And actually another part of the seed program that we fought for at the state level is also support for immigrant cooperatives. And so our Courage Home Care worker owned cooperative is a part of that collaborative, where we're looking to support these types of formations where undocumented immigrants come together. And there's no law. That's another myth. There's no law that says you can't be a business owner and earn as a business owner. There's only the law about working as an employee. So the co-op is a way to build like a democratically run business where you can improve your working situation as well, because the money's not going to someone else. It's going to all of you collectively as owners.
Yeah. I did want to add on a little bit too on just like entrepreneurship and co-ops as a way to build your own economic independence. I just feel like it's really amazing how a lot of the stories that I read were Filipinos who like started their own business because they lost their jobs during the pandemic. So I really appreciate folks sharing that with me as I help them with the application. But I think that just goes to show how creative and resourceful undocumented folks are. But it's also very, very helpful when there's support from the state, when there's support from organizations like Immigrants Rising, like the Filipino Workers Center, to help us help ourselves. I think we have it within us. We have the power to lift ourselves up and to make sure that we survive. But it shouldn't just be up to undocumented folks to support each other and ourselves. We need the whole community. And we need the state to support us.
Mm-hmm.
I think one really critical resource that people haven't been accessing enough and maybe don't know is accessible also to undocumented individuals is the housing and rental assistance, utilities assistance that they can apply for. The Housing is Key, the state funded program where you can pay the rent that you owe back 100%, the rent that you might owe, plus utilities. And definitely people should reach out if they need help accessing it, but you can actually go online and search for the housingiskey.com, I believe but if you search Housing is Key, it'll pop up and it takes you through an online application, and that's open right now. And it's really critical when the moratorium on evictions has ended already. But if you are searching or in the process of accessing the relief, it actually also helps to extend that protections against eviction. So we've seen a couple of folks who have been evicted now who didn't know about those resources until it was too late. And so I think it's really important that we get that information out also, and that's statewide.
I will also just quickly plug one last resources since we talked about public charge and public benefits, which are
Please continue. There's so many resources. I love it. I'm here soaking it in.
This is like dispelling that myth too, right? That there's no resources out there. But yeah, like public benefits and public charge could be kind of hard to navigate, I think, regardless of your immigration status or not. And so another friend from CIPC also recommended the website keepyourbenefits.org, which kind of helps folks answer folks' question around how using public benefits and your immigration status kind of like intersects. I personally cannot even, I don't know public charge as well. And so this will kind of help answer a lot of those different questions that folks have for that.
And folks might not know, but if they received like the DRE funds, that was the California, what does that stand for again? I'm forgetting. Disaster.
Disaster relief assistance or something like that. Disaster relief assistance for immigrants.
So any kind of like relief. We were also a part of helping to get out cash assistance to undocumented immigrants through the SURF Fund, the California Immigrant Resiliency Fund, which unfortunately that one's over already, but it did get out like millions of dollars to immigrants up and down the state. But if you received cash assistance, that if it was through a COVID relief program, that is actually not taxable income as well. So people should know that. Yeah. So because there are a lot of undocumented immigrants filing for their taxes and paying taxes. I think that's another myth. We also, as another resource, PwC is a VITA site. And so we do process applications for ITIN numbers. We're one of the few VITA sites that also does ITIN processing. Otherwise, people end up paying like hundreds of dollars to get an ITIN process, because you can't just do it on your own because you need document verification. So you can also do that at PwC. And then during the regular tax year, there's like, yeah, we do tax preparation as well. So there's a lot of resources out there, but still not enough and not an equitable enough amount of resources. Immigrants in LA County make up 35% of the population. And from the CARES Act money, it like fell way short of actually even getting to 35% going to the immigrant community. And a lot of that was like the ineligible resources to the undocumented part of our community, but also just the way that some of the programs rolled out where it didn't have the type of language accessibility and visibility to all of our communities. So that's what we need to actually shift. We have a campaign right now. If you want to get involved, there's the Immigrants Are LA campaign. Another resource where we are, there really hasn't been a strong and consistent immigrant voice at the county level, LA County level. And they received and are receiving $1.9 billion from the American Rescue Plan. And so they've already allocated half of it. And then this next year, they're going to be allocating the second half of it. And again, the ARP funds don't have any restrictions in terms of immigration and like being able to have immigration as making people ineligible. So these are funds that can be fully accessible. And we were advocating for the county to actually target, to think of like through an equity lens and really target funds for the immigrant community who's been disproportionately impacted by COVID, so that we can have a real just recovery. And so we were really shooting for 35% at least, because that's not equitable. But fortunately, there were some good things that they shifted that were targeted for our community, but it fell quite short of the 35%. So, we're still trying to build together and ask more people to get involved and get our voices heard, so that in this next round, the decision will happen officially in May, and all of those resources like could mean like so much to our communities, and being left behind in the resources, is just, there's already inequities before the pandemic, and we could either just like, this is a moment where we could really, those inequities could grow, or we could actually proactively as a society actually build back better and build a more just society and equitable society for us all, which is going to be better for us all. But yeah. So join Immigrants Are LA. That's my plug.
I love all of the resources. I'm sure that this podcast will be played over and over again to get all of the resources down because, and thank you all for dismantling the myths, that continue to, be about like in our society. It's an ongoing process, right? It's still a fighting movement, to continue to battle it and be sure that folks have, accessible means.
Can I
I also wanted to, yeah,
ask
go ahead.
one more question of Madison and Madeline before we go? I think we have a little bit of time, right?
Yeah, uh-huh.
You
Yeah.
know, you really lifted up the mutual aid efforts, and I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit more about like, because you talked about it as mutual aid, which is really fundamentally different than like charity or relief resources that um, yeah, that are seen more as like charity. So I wonder if you could lift up more like what is mutual aid, and how that actually helps to empower our communities versus how charity sometimes can have more, even though it helps, it can be also a kind of disempowering experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was really great about the mutual aid fundraisers that came up last year was a lot of the people who did the fundraising had the same identities as the people that they were trying to give it to. So I think that's one of the differences between like mutual aid fundraisers versus charity, where you're not like trying to get help from someone who's like in a different socioeconomic status as you, and you feel like you're being pitied or something because some rich person is giving you money. I think it just feels a lot more, I know you used the word democratic before, Aki. It just feels like you really are in community, that people who are giving to you, like you're in this struggle together, and that it's not just one person that's kind of saving people. It's not just like one charity that's like saving people. It's people coming together and with a deep understanding that people need money, that people need food, groceries, access to a car even, and even in getting the right information to people. So just the efforts that when it comes all together, it can help out so many people. And I think it really allowed people to plug in based on their different talents. So even when it came to like artists, they created really amazing graphics to circulate in social media so that it got a lot more attention from people. I know even like musicians helped put together like shows for fundraisers. One of the things like one of the fundraisers I enjoyed were like from drag shows to raise like mutual aid, to raise money for mutual aid fundraisers. And so I think it really just shows that everyone has so much to offer to the community, and when you put it all together in one effort, or even just like a series of different efforts, then it can sustain our communities. And something that was really cool too is that like say one mutual aid fundraiser ended, there was a new one that popped up because they understood that like, this is what works.
Yeah, I think I just want to really highlight the community effort, and you give what you can give, right? Like depending on what you can offer, whether that be a car, driving, music, money, all those things, that it's coming from like your neighbor, your friend, somebody from your community, and not just this outside force. And I think it was also behind the idea that community best help each other kind of thing. That makes it really different than charity and makes it a little bit more empowering, that like there's no outside agency that's like feels bad for me and will give me more money. This is just somebody who's part of my community who wants to see me succeed, because me succeeding means we're all succeeding kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's also just a really great question, right? That it shows just like how big and how well the community can come together during especially challenging times like the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so different, acknowledging that everyone is probably going to have needs during the pandemic, and everyone has something to contribute at the same time, which is such a different narrative. And I think, like you said, Madeleine, that like the community, like very locally, can actually meet needs and know the needs and meet the needs very specifically. So having like mutual aid efforts, and I think it would be great if, like, you know, like the big resources then supported these kind of very local mutual aid efforts, because the community knows the needs the most and can really get it to where it's needed the most. So I think we should be building this into our society overall, like having more mutual aid, more communities coming together. Hopefully that's something that can really last past this pandemic as well, so that we can become an even more resilient and strong community. But of course, we don't let the government off the hook and the other resources.
They need to
They
provide.
can support this. They can support these efforts so they're more sustainable. Like burnout is very, very real. I think so many organizers felt it during the pandemic, especially as it coincided with so many protests, with the many injustices that we face. And we just need support. We're affected by the same issues that we're fighting for. And if bigger organizations, if, the state, the government really cares about us as people, then they will also find ways to sustain us as people and our needs, and the causes that we're fighting for.
Yeah,
We have
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just curious because, and we do have time here, so I was wondering, like, with burnout and you all as organizers in this, how do you manage that, or how do you how did you get through burnout? Or
It's difficult. I mean, I think I'm looking at her because I'm just like, I think we're still both feeling it. But again, it just really helps to like have that community and uplift. A lot of us have like experienced burnout and just experienced different challenges through the pandemic, whereas like people have lost jobs or couldn't find jobs. Some people's families got COVID, or they themselves got COVID, but it was really great when we would have our little meetings, and I think we just did so many things. Like we did like a storytelling workshop to get to know each other. We did a movie screening. It was like very low key. We just pirated it. It's okay. But we did watch Minari together, and it was really great. Like, the movie is about like immigrants, or just Asian immigrants in particular, trying to make it here. And so we're all Asian immigrants trying to make it here. And it was just really great, like finding time to be in community with each other and find ways to experience joy, despite us being so isolated. I think that's underrated sometimes in movement work, that like we can enjoy things. There's so many dark things out there. Like let's have fun together too.
Love that.
Yeah, I think boundaries and just being kind to yourself during these times are so important. I remember during the beginning of the pandemic, like myself, my organization, my work was just like trying to respond to everything, right? And going. And we realized that was just like not sustainable for us. And so I'm still learning a lot. I think every day I learn something new about how to better take care of myself in today's world. But just making sure that I also just unplug, especially because my work is connected to who I am as a person too. And taking the time to like know that I can't solve everything today, that I have to say no to certain things, that I have to slow down a little bit has been really helpful too. Because at the end of the day, if like folks like me, if folks like Aqui and Madison are not doing the job anymore, like what good is it to be like trying to accomplish everything all at once today?
It's so true. And it was hard when you couldn't be actually in presence of others. Like in the domestic worker movement, we're like big huggers, and like, you know, we like draw strength from each other. And it's just different, you know, when you're on Zoom all the time and just trying to do everything. But yeah, I really appreciate, definitely feel all of that with the burnout, because everything was a crisis. So much, it was just so real. Losing people from our community, and just so hard, and responding. But it's so important for us to then, you know, be able to self-care and to have care for each other. And I think part of it was just like being able to connect even remotely with other people, and share, and take time to grieve together, take time to, you know, have a laugh together. All the wacky icebreakers we do online. No.
The wacky ones.
Those are the best.
Self-care is community care, you know, find that connection no matter where you are. So, yeah.
How about yourself, Eddy?
For me? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
For me, definitely having the support of comrades, of my partner, chosen family, open mics, art spaces, like being able to just find time to cope and process through therapy, you know, like that's been able to help me to get through a lot of the burnout. And I think on everything that you've said, I think what's most important is naming it and recognizing the burnout, because when you're able to like name it and recognize it, then you have more power over it. Then you're like, okay, now this is what's happening to my body, this is what's happening to my heart, you know, my mind. Now, what can I do to get that rest, a much needed rest, right, in order to sustain longevity in this work? And so for me, I'm just trying to get more of that into my practice. Sometimes I'll slip, you know, we're all human, right? We make mistakes, we'll slip, but hopefully, you know, with more practice, be able to confront burnout when it does happen or before it happens, and, you know, just be sure that we're all like healthy and be able to move forward. But yeah, just naming it. And for me, arts, therapy, all that community. So self-care is community care.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you, Madison and Madeleine, to actually bring our program to a close by talking about, like, what are the main takeaways from this episode that you want our community, our audience here at the podcast to take away with them?
I think the first one is, you know, undocumented folks are very resourceful and very resilient. We talked about like so many ways that folks have gotten creative, but to make it sustainable, it shouldn't just be up to our community to support ourselves. I think these efforts really need help to be sustained. So support these efforts, support other folks, undocumented communities in their efforts to sustain ourselves.
And I think we also just talked a lot about different resources that are available to undocumented folks in healthcare and education, in housing, in driver's license. We're really lucky to be here in California, where we have like a strong immigrant community and strong immigrant advocates themselves who've pushed for a lot of these things. And so I think it's just making sure that this information does reach out the undocumented community, that the fears associated with using them are also dispelled, and that people are being connected with just the resources that they need.
I forgot to say workers' rights, also resources. You have your rights as a worker, as an undocumented worker. That has not gone away.
Yes, and the last one, I feel like I don't know if we went over this enough, but yeah, I know undocumented Filipinos aren't always public about their status. There's so many myths that keep us in fear. I know TNT means tago and tago, but we don't always have to hide, because when we reach out is when we can find community, when we can find that support. for folks that do want to support the undocumented community. It really helps to, like, for allies to know what resources are out there, to also be just as informed, so that they can share that information and dispel myths out there, because there's a lot of resources, a lot of services, a lot of organizations that support undocumented folks, and these are, you know, available regardless of immigration status.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Just really quickly to add, I think when just talking to undocumented Filipinos, just being aware that like some of them might also be, or when talking to Filipinos in general, some folks may be undocumented. And so I think just like using inclusive language and knowing about all the different resources doesn't put the like onus on somebody to kind of come out in order to find help for them. Just like listing everything out that's available for people is helpful.
Well said, well said. Thank you, Madeleine. Thank you, Madison. Thank you, Aqui. So this here concludes our 13th episode. So thank you all for your insight. And so folks, please stay tuned for episode 14, part 1, community organizing during COVID-19 here in the West Coast / Midwest. It will be on Saturday, November 13th at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific time. So mark your calendars, please. I'm sure you're going to hear about many of these resources that was mentioned today during that episode itself.
And we have a call to action to everyone who is watching this podcast. We want you to follow us on social media. Excuse me, it's at Fil-XAO_CHA. And it should be dropped. You should be able to find it in Facebook in the comments or here in the chat. And like us on Facebook. Help us to build this strong Filipino community together. And again, thank you to AAPCHO, the Walmart Foundation, as well as the We Can Do This and the Department of Health and Human Services for making this podcast possible.
All right. So thanks, y'all. That wraps it up. Yay.